with her connection. So I want to ask her one more question, still related to what Ms. Machado has been saying about youth being heard. So, Ms. Piccolo, what can youth do to make sure that its voices are not just heard but listened to, and truly influencing the decisions of our generation and the decisions that will affect our generation?
Thank you. Apologize for my connection, but I'm currently running on hotspot because always lucky. I'm always lucky in these cases, so my Wi-Fi doesn't work. But I hope you can hear me fine now.
Yes,
that's no breaking up case. But back to your question, if I think that as Luisa was saying, if we want to influence decisions that will affect us, we must take part in discussion forum and policy making processes. So we need to we must show up in those forums, in those discussion forums, and pretend, ask people to hear from us. And we have to do that on equal footing with other stakeholders. But somehow, young people, there is a huge barrier when it comes from convincing senior stakeholders to consider us, to consider our viewpoint, is because young people, in their opinion, are not seen as legitimate stakeholders, because according to they, we are not bearers of common specific interests, because we don't have, according to them, appropriate capacity to work on policy drafts, or because they think we have little to no experience in a given field. Sometimes because the vision of young people is not socially and geographically consistent across Europe, and let alone across the globe. For example, an average teenager coming from southern Italy can bear a completely different interest that one teenager that coming from the Netherlands, for example. We all know in this room that this is not true, because many of us have made a huge impact in the past. There are young experts in very specific field, and in a very advanced field of the internet. And what we have to do also in this case is try to leverage the core value that brings us together. For example, young people joining the Internet Society Youth Standing Group, they believe that the Internet has certain properties, that is open, decentralized, accessible, general purpose, neutral, and reliable. And we have the duty to keep it that way. So everything that comes close to jeopardize the Internet, as we know and as we value, mainly from government regulation and business model of certain company, boosts our duty to act. So what we do and can be done is to adapt the training and advocacy efforts of young people according to the stakeholder groups we wish to address. If young people wish to have a say in an internet regulation or a public policy, they have to address parliaments and governmental agency, and therefore they have to learn how to carry out an internet impact assessment to actually write or contribute to a policy draft, while for a private sector it's a completely different approach. The second option is to take advantage of the Internet Governance Forums and NRIs in general, in that environment, you have the chance of your life to meet people who have the power to make decisions. And somehow they come there to find solutions. So we can advocate for cross-generational panels like that of Luisa, for example, for roundtable with parliamentarians or with representative of public agency. And besides there, it's highly expected you may come across a member of your parliament in corridor, and you have to be ready. You have to be ready to say something meaningful and try to refrain from motherhood statements that they are extremely busy people. So you cannot expect to you cannot expect them to take you seriously if you go there to say something like, please do something for cyberbullying, or please foster inclusivity in the digital sphere. You have to be very specific. You have to be bold. You have to share your experience because you are the main users of the internet. You live basically since you have memory in the digital spheres. So you have to share your experience as a user, but also as a young expert.
Thank you so much, Ms. Piccolo. And I would like now to introduce Mr. Alexander Karatosho. Welcome. Can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, yes. Hello, Andrea. It's a pleasure to address you. And then I'm very happy to hear the other speakers say what I wanted to say as well. So we agree a lot on many points.
I'm glad to hear it that we're all on the same page. But for the audience to get to know you a little bit, you are the Young European Ambassador for the Western Balkans, and you are the President of Youth Empowerment Association, and therefore you are heavily involved in youth engagement on the daily. What does meaningful youth engagement look like to you?
I agree. We have the same saying that the young people should be really listened to, not just invited to be heard in a room. And in the Western Balkans, since they represent the region, the politicians have a bad habit of just inviting young people for photo shoots, for publicity stunts, in order to say that young people are with us, because it's a popular thing in the EU, and they want to, in a way, show that they are progressive politicians. But the final result is that they are not really implementing the ideas and suggestions that the young people are giving. And I strongly believe that the young people have proven many times that they deserve to be part of these processes, and they are very good in giving ideas, and they're very smart and critical in all of the ideas that are given. We have some world leaders as Greta, as Malala, which show that we have potential to change the world and to do something great. And we see now that maybe a few years ago, a decade ago, politicians had the freedom to choose if they want to address our needs and challenges or not. But now we see that they must do that because we are facing a very big issue with brain drain. We have a lot of young people that are leaving our countries, our communities. They're going to Europe because there are much better opportunities. There are much better conditions and jobs. So basically, we see that the politicians are now concerned because without the young people, without the people in your country, you cannot rule anything. Basically, the health won't be as good as it was. The law system, the pensions will have difficulties to be given out. So basically, brain drain is a very big issue for the region, and the politicians are starting to get that more and more. But also youth engagement in civil society organizations is really important. It's as much as important as the policy involvement, because as an active volunteer, as a member, as a leader in an organization with some position in it, you can gain crucial skills that are important for both personal and professional development, and they can help you in a way to accelerate your career. I would also like to mention here, because I think it's really important, the ladder of participation. That is a theory made in the previous century, actually. where the author says that there are 8 steps to youth, or he says child participation, because then it wasn't that famous. I mean, it wasn't defined the young people as a special category. It was more children, but it applies to the young people as well. There is 8 steps divided in 2 phases. So basically, the first phase is non-participation. The first 3 steps are in the non-participation, where there is a decoration. Sorry, the first phase is manipulation. So where the young people, in a way, are manipulated to represent something that the organization or the party wants. In a way, he compares the example of children wearing some T-shirts or some banners on a protest or in a meeting where they say something, or the media portrays them to say something which they don't really understand. So in a way, the children and young people are manipulated to say something which they don't really understand or they don't know as well. The next step is decoration, where the young people are invited to do a dance performance, to do some fun activity, but in a way to promote somebody's ideas, somebody's, let's say, background. So here again, the young people are not aware what's happening and are there maybe for fun reasons, to get with their friends, to get some refreshments. So he gives this example in his theory. After that, there is tokenism, where young people are invited to these panel discussions, to the serious topics in institutions, but they're very well prepared. They're carefully chosen who goes. So they're smart young people, but they're portraying a message that the other people want to portray. They're not portraying the view of the young people. They're not consulting the young people. Basically, they're just, let's say, a megaphone of the political parties, of the organizations, of somebody that wants to convey a message. So he gives these 3 steps as non-participation, and in a way, young people are being used in a sense. After that, he says that all of the next 5 steps are in the level of participation. There are various degrees, starting with assigned but informed. This means that the young people are assigned by the grown-ups, let's say, but are informed of what they're doing. So they're not manipulated, they're not used in any way, they know what they're doing. So this is a step forward, and that's why he considered this as, let's say, participation, because they understand what they're doing. The next step is consulted and informed. So basically, they're also consulted what happens, their opinions are heard, and in a way, the organizers can implement those opinions if they think that they are good enough. The next step is adult initiated, but shared decision with young people. So this is a much bigger step where the adults, again, the policymakers are inviting the young people to the table, and they're in a way giving them the right to make a decision with them. So adults initiate the idea, adults shape the idea, but young people are contributing to it, and in a way give their saying into the matter. The next step would be youth initiated and directed. So this is most of the civil society organizations like I've been part in. So basically the young people are the engine of the idea of the project. They're pushing everything through the idea. Basically they're doing everything and they're directing it. So they do what they want without consultation from other sides, from other stakeholders. And the last step, the highest step of participation, which Roger Hart says, it's youth initiated, but shared decision with adults. So basically, youth should be the engine of the policies of the projects that are in interest to them, for the young people, but the decision should be shared with adults. And there were a lot of critics why the 7th step is not the last one, the youth initiated and directed. But he says that the young people should not be seen as somebody oppressed, that should be liberated from the adults or from the, let's say, grown-ups. But they should be a valuable stakeholder in the whole process, like to give their perspectives, their ideas, to contribute as much as they can, and in a way to use their potential, because young people have a lot of potential. And I completely agree with this theory, because I've passed through all of these phases myself, and I believe that meaningful youth engagement would be from the 4th step upwards. So basically, when you really participate in the process, and you know what you're doing, you're not being manipulated, you're not doing somebody's agenda, but basically you are doing something that is meaningful for the young people. And I would say that that is truly what meaningful youth engagement is for me.
Thank you so much for reminding us about the ladder of participation and the different levels of power dynamics. Ms. Machado, how can we counter these power dynamics and build a truly global, inclusive, and solidarity driven youth movement? So, uniformizing everyone from those ladders of participation he was mentioning before.
Well, I think, in my opinion, the real key is acknowledging our differences and embracing intersectionality. Me and many other young people, activists, working in internet governance around the world, we usually converge in advocating for more inclusive, holistic, even the colonial perspectives to policymaking and, progressive politics. In my case, for example, intersectionality comes in my role as a young Latina to bring unique global South perspective to my research projects, work, activism. But really being intersectional is also admitting that one person cannot be representative of an entire population or region or country. Um, and I think it's also being aware of our privileges, our biases, and working together in a process of co-creation in which we aim, especially, not to reproduce old power dynamics that end up marginalizing even more certain groups. I always say that everything is political, that really advanced some key aspects for political participation of young people. So I think that no matter where in the world, I have always advocated for leveraging intersectionality to connect technology, sustainable development, human rights. And I know that there's like a general rejection of politics among young people, but we can't be afraid of being political and engaging in decision making. And believe me, I know it feels awful when we're trying to speak and there's an old white man looking down on us. But it's really by shifting these power dynamics that we'll be able to create innovative, just and inclusive institutions for everyone, including us.
So true. Thank you so much for teaching us the neck test. I will remember that. And we have about 20 more minutes, and I would like to ask the final question to Mr. Karatosho, that there are many obstacles facing youth when it comes to entering the policy making sphere. We mentioned some of the obstacles today. Have you yourself faced any obstacles as a young leader in the policy making field? Which ones, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, of course. I passed through all of these steps that I mentioned in the ladder of participation. So in the beginning, it was much harder. I mean, it's not always also about the personal phase, but it's also about the community, because every country, every community has a different stage. I mean, just to mention these statistics, for example, when it comes to the Macedonian society, there are various studies that say that 80 to 90% of the young people have never taken part in a project or initiative or been member of an organization. So basically, just a small part of the country's young population has taken part in projects, in the civil society organizations, in doing something good for the community. And I think that is a very small number of people. And I mean, my job was to, in a way, engage young people and motivate young people to engage much more in the process. And there is also a statistic, like from one of them made from the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, that claims that 85% of the young people have never been consulted from their local or national bodies, governments. So basically, nobody asked them about their opinion. And as the speaker before me said, like young people are in a way reluctant to join these political processes. But if you explain to them that all of this is connected, all the political processes are connected to every one of us, to every aspect of our lives, even though you're, I don't know, an artist, doctor, whatever you are, all of these political happenings, all these policies are influencing our daily lives. And when you explain that to young people, I think they will be much more eager to join the process. I mean, I'm let's say active not in politics, but as policies and in the political situation that is happening in the country since I was like 13, 14 years. I was really engaged since back then, which is not pretty usual for a child or a young person. And but there are definitely difficulties in our for our voices to be heard and our ideas to be implemented. But in a way, I think that it's a normal process. It's a natural transition because our countries, our region, the Western Balkans region, is was socialistic, was more authoritarian, and now we are transitioning to democratic values. Now all of our countries are democratic, and we are in a way adjusting to the process because it is very hard even today for the politicians to listen to really acknowledge that young people are have good ideas and are valuable. So it's a process, and I think with how with the time that comes, I think it will be better and better. I see the situation before, like few 5 6 years ago, it was much worse because we were in a way a decoration or a token. Now let's say we are consulted, we have that adults that initiate, but we are part of the process. So basically we climb few ladders, few steps on the ladder in the last few years. So I think the situation is getting better. Personally, I've taken part in some the important processes like the national strategy for young people. Basically, I was part in the beginning when it was drafted, and then I was part of the action plan that was for the last year or two. So basically, we are contributing as an individuals, as an organization in the whole process, and most of ideas are already accepted. So the situation is getting much better from my perspective, and I believe that with time we have the law for youth now that engages young people in the local and national bodies. For example, the government must consult with the national body. Local communities will have local youth councils, and in a way, the young people will be heard more and more. We have also regional youth cooperation offices that work with the youngsters and the governments, and uh, I'm optimistic in this way because as our EU integration path continues, because the way nobody, I mean, the 6 countries in the Western Balkans are not part of the EU. Still, I think that it will get much better because the EU is really supportive and it has a lot of support to the young people through different programs, but also pressure to the politicians to include us in all of the processes.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers from session one, to Mr. Martinovic, Mr. Karatosho, Ms. Macedo, and Ms. Piccolo for reminding us to be resilient, to speak up, to find a way and climb the participation ladder so that we reach the top and that we represent the communities we are coming from. So thank you for being inspirational to us and motivating us to get more involved, starting with the local and working our way up. So thank you for your participation as always. It has been very nice to have you. And Celia, back to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your great moderation. And I want to thank you also all the speakers for their great contribution. I think you have given us a very meaningful insight and also very nice tools to work towards this meaningful youth engagement. Everyone here in this session, I'm sure we are all aiming to contribute to meaningful youth engagement by preparing ourselves in a nice way, like Veronica said, that we have to be ready in order to be in the appropriate scenario at the appropriate time with appropriate knowledge as well. So they take us into account in a meaningful way. Our voices matter, but we have to prove that they matter. Also, Luisa addressed that sometimes we may find ourselves out of place, which is totally normal as we are young. We might be scared. We came from the academia world while not used to really get involved in real policy making. So it might be scary, but we have nothing to lose. We just can win. We just can raise our voices and make others brave as well to join us. So I think there's nothing to lose and a lot to win towards this. And it has also been very meaningful, the different the step ladder that Mr. Alexander addressed in the how should we first be aware of what we are doing so nobody can manipulate us, because I think, as you have said, nowadays through fake news, social media, we can be easily manipulated and it's very easy to fall into these wrong actions. So being aware, having critical thinking is very, very important. It's something that we not always learn in school. So we might learn it by ourselves and by asking ourselves questions if what we are doing is right, if we know what we are doing. So to be able to contribute in these different layers. Once we are aware, we can gain the knowledge, we can then share this knowledge, and then this knowledge can be heard and taken into account by the important stakeholders that really have finally the decision power. So it's a very nice insight on this, let's say, contribution process that I think everyone has to take into account just to be aware in this world. And finally, Ivan also addressed very interesting issues regarding the power that in his field actually the artificial intelligence has, and how youth are able to contribute to this, even though sometimes we might not seem as specialized or expert as old people. We have been born in this kind of digital world, so our voices really matter in this, and we are very interested in contributing to this. So I want to thank all the speakers for your really meaningful contributions, and now I will let the floor to the audience, just in case someone wants to address any kind of questions. Please go ahead. Let's. If you don't want to take the floor, please feel free to write any question in the chat. Okay, maybe it seems that we have no any
I
further.
think Athena has her hand up. Do you want to ask something, Athena?
Yeah. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes, I had a question for Luisa because I think she brought up a very important point, which is sometimes youth is sidelining as making stuff for youth. So how do we move away from this scheme where we actually integrate youth in a way that is not limited to for youth?
Well, I think I think we can't forget what we have to bring to the table. I said this and I really, would like to emphasize it because, we're young, but that doesn't mean we're not qualified. A lot of us, we have, very good education. We, have participated in like different political spheres and different initiatives. So I think this is, something that we can't forget. Um, of course, you know, in the end, we also have to prove ourselves, and it's what Celia was saying. Sometimes just knowing that we can do it is not enough. We have to show how we have done it, and that's why I think it's important to really, like speak up. And I'm always talking about, when I talk to my friends, etc., about posting things on social media, especially for example like LinkedIn and Twitter. um Post what you've done, post what you believe in, post your ideas, share this with the world. mm, because that gives you some sort of almost like agency in your own path. And don't be afraid to go up to people and be like, hey, I think I can contribute, do you want to talk to me? And like really be out there. I think I don't know, it's one of the first steps to cross this line of building things just for us to building things for everyone as well.
Thank you so much for your answer. I think we have one more question from Max Zuber. Max, can you hear us? You're still on mute, Max, I think.
Now I hope you can hear me.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the insight. I'm sorry I was a bit late to the meeting, so I hope that the question I will pose now hasn't been answered by you already. I'll try to ask them either way. I would have one question for Luisa and one for Alexander. So the one for Luisa would be, you mentioned that we have to make sure that we have inclusive processes, and when we perform that NAC test, which I really like, that we can see that there's inclusivity in the room. How can we make sure that we achieve that? Like, have you any tips and ideas on how we can secure the participation of a more inclusive membership, especially for international processes? Because I quite often feel that we still have that bottleneck effect, that for international programs, it's quite often still dominated by white young males. How we could end that. And the other one would be for Alexander, concerning the letter of participation. Any tricks or ideas how we could proceed from one step to the other, especially when I quite often see that especially right now, there are more more groups interested in having some form of youth participation, and then it's often initiated by these organizations. How can we make sure that a process that was not initiated by youth can reach another level on this level of participation? And yeah, that would be it. Thank you very much.
So maybe I can start. Well, Max, I think this is really, it's a really good question, and I think I can draw some parallels to when we talk about, for example, the inclusion of or the role of men in feminism, for example, and we usually say that it's the role of men in feminism is not to take our place, but rather be aware of it and then use your power basically to influence these spaces. So I think we can draw a parallel here. The first step is awareness, being aware that this is a thing and this is a problem. And I think the next step is using our own power, not just as men, but as people who are already included in these processes, to also be aware and say, well, I think this is not an inclusive process, and stand up for it and saying, well, then this should change. So I think that would be my takeaway.
Thank you for the question. I mean, my suggestion would be to, in a way, organize yourselves in a group. Civil society organizations are a really good example of it because they represent a cause that you can in a way support. There are a lot of youth organizations, a lot of civil society organizations that represent different things. You can find the one that you are interested in. You can find the thing that you want to pursue, and in a way join their cause. And because together you will be much stronger. An individual cannot change the community, but a group, united group of young people will be definitely something that can influence the community. So the first suggestion will be to, in a way, find like-minded people, join an organization, join the movement, join something that is consistent of young people that want to do the same thing as you, and in a way, take active role in the whole process. Also, I would like to mention to get informed, because again, an organization can also manipulate the young people in order to pursue their own background interests. So get informed about the organization, get informed about the political situation, about the issue that happens in your country on the regional level or in a world context, because now we have climate change, we have a potential war escalation. So basically we need to be aware also about the global context of the issues. And you should be informed about the things that are happening. You shouldn't be an expert, of course, on everything, as a lot of the Balkan people are in the region. But you should get informed about the topics that matter to you. And also here is the development of soft skills. Personally, I've been part of around 20 Erasmus Plus projects, which are an amazing opportunity, and I recommend everyone to join, because you can learn a lot of the soft skills that are needed for, let's say, to pursue your interest, because I know that young people have the tendency to revolt against the authorities, to, let's say, against the government, against the one in charge. But when you start to get into this kind of consultations, you start meeting people, you see that it's much better if you have a more calm tone, if you use more diplomacy, let's say discussions, like a more, let's say, soft tone, if the circumstances allow, of course, because when you revolt, there is a revolt on the other side and it becomes an issue, and in the end, nobody will get anything. But when you develop this, let's say, critical thinking, teamwork, these kind of skills that are very important to manage the group, I think that is much easier to pursue what you want on the other politicians or group, whatever you want to change. So this will be like my 2-3 tips to help you in your youth engagement.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for reminding us to be careful to what organizations we sign up for and that they actually represent what they're saying and that they're actually looking for the youth benefit rather than other devious motives. So thank you for warning us. And thank you to Luisa again for her answers and explaining how important it is to be aware and to not be misinformed, but also to develop your skills and look out for what is happening in the world in order to become that global youth community that we are looking to build. Celia?
Well, thank you very much for the questions from the audience and also for our speakers to kindly respond to them. I think by now, if there are not any more questions in the chat, I cannot see any more questions and no more hand raised. So we can finish this session here. I want to thank once again all the speakers for joining us for meaningful discussing in meaningful youth engagement, giving us insights on how can we do it in an appropriate way, in a way that it really matters and that really gets into place. So thank you very much. And now we will go into a 15-minute break, so you can go refill your coffee and just get ready for our second session, which will be about youth voices in quality education towards the digital future, with an additional contribution of Ms. Athena Vassinopoulos, which will be giving us some outputs from the cross-cutting session that took place last Friday, which was a side event for the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And there, some 2 points that were discussed were this quality of education and also gender equality in the STEM field and technological field. So we will gain some meaningful insight from her in some minutes. So see you now in 15 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. It was a great session.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Of Generation Connect Europe Youth Group has brought together motivated students and young professionals from all over Europe.
When it comes to digital development, we have reached a point where future development in technology and politics are inseparable.
We are the generation most affected by the digital transformation.
We have grown up in the information age, engaging with technology in more and more ways.
We are aware of the challenges and opportunities provided by the ICTU now and in the future.
We can take the lead in ensuring that digital transformation is safe, leaving no one behind and providing meaningful experiences to people in all aspects of their lives.
It is important for the youth to be recognized as stakeholders within the field of digital development to make sure that these processes are inclusive and representative.
We are now more than ever ready to take action and be part of shaping our digital future.
The result of our common efforts is the Youth Declaration, a representation of our hopes.
For a more inclusive, connected, and safer digital world.
For a digitally competent society and for better digital policies.
This declaration states the opportunities and challenges that we face as young adults, reflecting our optimism, energy, and natural familiarity with technology.
It brings together our experiences, knowledge, and ideas to work towards a common goal of supporting digital development in Europe through actionable solutions.
Most of all, this project shows that young people from across Europe can come together from a range of backgrounds and experiences to drive change.
But we will not stop there.
This is the first step towards increasing youth engagement and giving the youth a voice in the field of digital development.
We deserve a seat at the table where discussions on digitalization are taking place.
As Generation Connect, we are committed to playing an active role in shaping this new future together with the ITU and its membership.
We are excited to be able to contribute to the preparations of the World Telecommunication Development Conference 2021.
We look forward to the World Telecommunication Development Conference outcomes and implementation, accelerating the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals.
It is important to engage the youth of today to solve the questions of tomorrow.
We have to prepare ourselves to face new challenges and opportunities in an ever-growing digital world.
The time to shape our future is now.
Let's make it happen.
What does it mean to be connected?
To be connected is being part of something bigger without physical barriers.
To be connected means to have a bond with someone or something that is established on common goals, interests, aspirations, or even feelings that leaves you with a good impression.
We are connected when we can communicate with anyone, anywhere.
It means to be open-minded, to have an opportunity to express my potential and build the inclusive and
What does it mean to be connected?
To be connected is being part of something bigger without physical barriers.
To be connected means to have a bond with someone or something that is established on common goals, interests, aspirations, or even feelings that leaves you with a good impression.
We are connected when we can communicate with anyone, anywhere.
It means to be open-minded, to have an opportunity to express my potential and build the inclusive and
To be connected is being part of something bigger without physical barriers.
To be connected means to have a bond with someone or something that is established on common goals, interests, aspirations, or even feelings that leaves you with a good impression.
We are connected when we can communicate with anyone, anywhere.
It means to be open-minded, to have an opportunity to express my potential and build the inclusive and innovative digital
This is what inspires me every day, the power of technology for good. Billions of people are still unconnected today, many of which are youth. Imagine what we could achieve if we connected all those eager minds to the power of digital. I believe it's more than time to build a future with youth, for youth. The ITU Generation Connect initiative imagines a world where global youth plays a central role in the digital development dialogue, alongside the leaders and other stakeholders. Digital is the new normal. And as the true generation of digital natives, young people are uniquely placed to harness the power of digital technologies and reshape the connectivity agenda.
Digital innovation is for every youth, everywhere.
Leaving no one behind means leaving no one offline.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome to the second session. I hope you all got time to go for refill your coffee and take a little breath. So as we said before, we will start this discussion on quality education with the intervention of Atena Vassinopoulos, the youth envoy for the Generation Connect Europe Youth Group, which will be presenting the main outcomes of the cross-cutting session on digital transformation beyond COVID-19, which was held last Friday, 1st of April, as the side event for the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. So Atena, thank you very much for presenting on this past event and for coming here today to present your main conclusions. So Atena, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Celia. So regarding the conclusion of the Regional Forum, I will be speaking to you about the SDG 4 and SDG 5. So regarding SDG 4, which is quality education, members and stakeholders in different countries are committed to work towards the development of digital skills by namely investing in capacity building to develop the skills. But there are some challenges when it comes to offering quality education that were brought up. So firstly, there is a challenge of digital development in rural areas. Representatives of Kyrgyzstan reminded us of the challenges and the opportunities that the ITU has been developing in partnership with UNICEF. But there are still challenges related to cost and limited memory of the solutions offered to work in rural areas. Also, since the pandemic, we can say that the digital divide has widened, requiring a recovery strategy, but also a strategy to improve the lack of access to internet and related devices. Regarding education policy, we talked about the fact that it should be focused on quality rather than on quantity, and that technology should be used to enhance learning when it's feasible. And finally, we also talked about capacity building for teachers, which is for now limited to basic digital skills, which is not sufficient to support the efforts of digitalization. Regarding SDG 5, which was gender equality, gender equality has been recognized as a priority by members and stakeholders. They have also made a lot of efforts to document the gender disparity to foster data-driven policies. So for instance, the Republic of Serbia has published the Gender Equality Index for the third time in a row. The Regional Cooperation Council mentioned research aiming at identifying policies related to gender disparity in STEM in the Western Balkan to identify the next steps. But in addition of the development of research, which also we have to mention faces obstacles, namely the lack of data related to gender, as mentioned by Representative Serbia. We also talked about the importance of increasing women's visibility to improve representation and develop new norms. As we mentioned in the previous session, that also stereotypes remain a major obstacle for girls and women to participate in ICT. And finally, we also mentioned the role of social media as an obstacle towards gender equality, as it can often be used as a tool to reinforce stereotype behavior. So this is also a point to take into account. And as we also mentioned in the previous session, gender equality does not only concern women, but men also have to take an active step in building awareness and calling others on their behavior. So those were the main points from the regional forum. Do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Atena, for your intervention. I think I assisted the event as well, and I think there were some very interesting contributions, as you have just mentioned. So thank you very much for assisting and for coming here today to present us the outcomes. And now I will leave the floor to the next session moderator, who will be Andrei Dodea. And he will be moderating the session and asking the questions for the speakers. So Mr. Andrei, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Celia. This is our second panel
for today. And in this panel, we will be discussing the main challenges in achieving quality education in Europe, aligned with the expectations of the digital future. The speakers will also address the main actions undertaken by their organizations to achieve this very important goal. On today's panel, we have Miss Sabrina Purbo. I'm apologizing for my mispronunciation. Sabrina is a project manager at the European Schoolnet and has been a member of its digital citizenships team since 2014. She's also coordinating the youth activities and annual Pan-European Youth Panel as part of the Better Internet for Kids project. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. Very nice being with you.
Very nice being with you as well. I have to ask, on the website of the European Schoolnet, where you work as a project manager, it states that it aims to help schools become effective in the pedagogical use of technology. Could you please tell us more about what type of technology this refers to? Why is it important to develop the adequate skills to leverage these technologies?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Andre, and also Celia for inviting me to join you this morning. So as Andre already said, I'm a part of the digital citizenship team here at European Schoolnet, and we are basically dealing with any kind of topic in regards to online safety, promoting media literacy education, but also challenges children and young people, but also other users facing when they're being online. So just to come back to Andre's question, we are basically talking about any kind of technologies that foster digital skills and media literacy education. And I think it's very safe to say that we are mostly nowadays referring to smart devices because this is the way people are accessing the internet of today. We feel it is very important to include technology within teaching and learning activities. As all of you surely know, children and young people growing up with technology nowadays from a very young age on. We are seeing images of toddlers who are in front of an iPad who seem already very comfortable using this iPad. They can't even speak, write or do anything, but they know this swipe finger. They seem very comfortable with this. So it is really important that we, from a very young age, embrace these technology when children and young people are using this. And by nowadays, we are also not anymore talking about the technical skills. I think 10 years ago or many more years ago, we were talking just about hard and technical skills that we wanted to teach children and young people, but by nowadays and all the challenges we are facing when being online, we're also talking about soft skills and foremost social skills as well. So we need to make sure that young people and children, that we support them when they're to make sure that they're navigating the internet in a safe and a responsible way. And I think, latest events within this world, speaking about the current situation in Ukraine, but also the pandemic, a very good example that show how easily children and young people are exposed to sensitive and harmful content online. And not necessarily this content is not only coming from the traditional media anymore, from news channels, but also from other people, content creators, influencers, because we need to be aware that all of us is a content creator when being online, but it's very important to make sure that we are consuming resources that are very trustful. And I think this is very important to teach children and young people about, because unfortunately, social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, TikTok have become places where an awful amount of these kind of dis and misinformation, so-called fake news, are circulating. So these are just, let's say, the main and the most important reasons why, when we working together with adults, with educators and parents, we always tell them that they need to embrace the technology that children and young people are using. We are not asking them that they need to understand all the technical requirements of the TikTok platform. I also don't understand it, but you have to have a conversation with your child. You have a conversation with the young people. You need to ask them what are they doing when they're online, and also what are they seeing. And I think this is where it starts. When you talk about technology, you don't need to have devices in your hand. I think it's most important to start a conversation and to also understand the child and the young person's perspective. Why are they using these platforms? Why are they so interested in? So it's just basically showing interest and yeah, as I said, embracing the technologies and the platforms children and young people are using.
Thank you so very much for your answer. I fully agree that we do need to first have a dialogue about technology rather than understand the technical terms. Thank you very much. On today's panel, we also have Mrs. Leila Violet Holm. She's the youngest ever IBMZ champion in the program's history for her efforts to demystify the tech industry by uniting thousands of young technologists globally to use technology as a catalyst to achieve social good. Welcome, Mrs. Leila.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning to you too. You are the youngest ever IBMZ champion in the program's history. Congratulations. What made you interested in tech in the first place?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think always I've been such a naturally curious individual. So whether it's technology or not, I've always been the one to ask what some people may consider the annoying question, why? I think that's such a powerful one rather. And I think that in adopting this mentality from a young age, I've been exposed to so many opportunities, and I've kind of got this now kind of motivation that's being proactive and not reactive, in thinking that opportunities won't just come to me, but I need to proactively go and seek them. And I think a lot of the time it stems out of frustration for you'll see something in the world that you want to see change. You'll see that you're not represented in the tech industry. I attended my first hackathon at 10 years old. The event was initially intended for postgraduates, and I sat there. People thought I was, like, as someone previously said, the daughter of a participant at the event. So yeah, it's always just been being proactive in what it is I'm wanting to do, and just wanting to understand what I would consider really the language of the future. I think at school there's such an emphasis on picking up languages like French and like Spanish, but learning how to code for me at the age of 8 was this really eye-opening opportunity, and it really did expose me to so much more as to what went behind all of my favorite things that I engaged in, like learning to use some of our most edutech kind of solutions in terms of learning to read and write using technology. I was always just exposed to it, and I was just keen to understand how it works, so I'm not kind of surrounded by technology and allowing it to consume me, but rather I have some control over it, and I'm allowed to use it as my catalyst to achieve whatever it is I'm most interested about, in this case the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's something we all can take away. Proactivity is absolutely mandatory for achieving anything. Fully agree with that. On our panel, we also have Joanna Sheshu. She's the policy officer at the Ethno Association. Welcome, Joanna.
Hello, Andre. Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Hello. You are the policy officer at the Ethno Association. What is your role in making sure youth has a voice and place in the digital future?
Yes, so thank you, Andre, and thank you also the colleagues from the ITU for inviting me today. It's a great honor to be here. Also delighted to be a part of such a knowledgeable panel engaged in digital education. A few words first about Ethno. Ethno is the association representing the European telecom sector. Our members represent 70% of investments in telecom infrastructure in Europe. So they are leading the way in new networks and services as well, bringing 5G for Europe, developing database services, and also enabling networks with AI. Before answering to your question, if you will allow me also some general remarks. achieving quality education in Europe to be prepared for the digital future. When we discuss this topic, I think it's absolutely fundamental to have all the stakeholders around the table, youth, NGOs, like this panel today, government, schools, and the workforce. It's also important to continue the discussion with the businesses in that kind of debate, because they are part of a solution and well placed also to prepare learners for the needs of the job market. And when we talk about quality education, we talk about skills in ICT, in digital, and we saw it became a priority for the European Commission with the Digital Compass for 2030 that evolves around 4 cardinal points, and one of them is skills. And the targets are aiming at having minimum 80% of the population with digital skills in 2030, and 20 million employed ICT specialists in the EU. Coming back to your questions, Andre, about my role making sure youth has a voice and a place in the digital future. First, it starts with the fact that I'm advocating to enable this digital future, because fostering development of high-performing digital education ecosystem is a priority for Ethno. And for this ecosystem to prosper, it needs connectivity that is a backbone of our digital society. And in my work, it translates by advocating for the deployment of infrastructure, connectivity, and digital equipment. And why is it important? Because it may sound granted, but a BCG global study found that insufficient digital infrastructure is the #1 barrier preventing the development of a digital culture at school. So that's why we are advocating for more digital infrastructure. And second, as an association with a European footprint, we are also engaged to build projects at the European level. This is the case, for example, for a project with FEDE, the Federation of Education in Europe. It gathers more than 500 educational institutions in 41 countries in Europe. And as you know, the pandemic, the crisis gave a difficult environment for students and young graduates to find professional opportunities in the market. And this collaboration between FEDE members and Ethno members will facilitate students' access to professional opportunities in the telecom sector, and meet also the skills requirement for our members and help them face the challenges that we have today of finding qualified workforce with the right digital skills. And for example, concretely, this translates in building a questionnaire to identify the existing and future skills that we will need in the telecommunication sector, and also build bridges between young people and the professional world to prepare them for this, because the digital sector has been creating jobs without interruption for over 10 years, and there is this constant search for talent.
Thank you so very much for your insights. We are glad to have you here. The next member of our panel is Mr. Daniel Kalemi. He is a machine learning researcher at Squishy Robotics and the youth envoy for the Generation Connect Europe group.
Thanks for having me. It's actually close to 3 a.m. here in San Francisco, but I thought, I thought it would be worth it to just give up some sleep just to be part of this panel. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so very much for joining us at such a late hour. You are co-leading a health tech initiative to improve access to the diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy through machine learning. What does it mean to you to be a young person holding a leading role in the digital development field?
Well, yeah, although I wouldn't call myself as a leader in the space, but I would say it's more of a fulfilling process. And I think the key here is education. Education is definitely key. Before I had experiences, I did my undergrad in Greece. I started my undergrad actually in Albania, but then dropped out because I didn't like the program. So I think it really kind of like the education and like everything that you go through really projects you to the path that you're going towards to. And since like Silicon Valley and like San Francisco is very well known for like the startup ecosystem and like all the tech hubs and the clusters, I just wanted to take advantage of all this ecosystem. I think it's really essential because it's really embedded in their school system, especially the big schools here, the Berkeley where I study and like Stanford. It's not a surprise that the big tech is here because it's not actually the schools are here because of the tech. It's the other way around. It's because the schools were here, they enabled all this, let's say, healthy ecosystem for them to thrive. So it's really co-leading a health startup. It's challenging, but I think once you have all the guidelines and once you start, it's just an exciting process. I was very excited because in my previous schools, my undergrad was a small community college in Greece. We didn't really have, let's say, innovative like ecosystems. Here, as soon as I started the first orientation week, we had like 35 different, let's say, competition where we need to take part in, and all of them were backed by venture capital funds or even from like social entrepreneurship funds. And just like you miss out if you don't start. So I was like, why not? Even though like I was thinking maybe start in a big tech or maybe do some research. I just thought this was a good surprise to just try. And I think everyone around my age like would try to do different things because it's like part of the process. You are just exploring to find where you want to be the next 5 to 10 years. So, and I think the most important part is that you definitely don't have to, for example, take money and then have to stay or question and give like answers for like what different venture capitalists have to do with your money, but then you have your space to do everything because most of the money is like grants and you can explore everything. So you can start from like social entrepreneurship where you don't necessarily have to win anything in terms of like revenue, but you can start as a B corporation or a benefit corporation where the main goal is not only to break even and be sustainable, but also have an impact in the space where you're trying to be in. For example, in the diabetic space, it's like more over 444 million people who have diabetics, and it's going to be close to 500 million by the end of this decade. And especially in remote areas where this is inaccessible, just trying to create technology that makes this technology accessible, it's really crucial to just create this preventative medicine that is lacking in many fields, especially with the US. Like the health system here is horrible. I'm just like wishing everything would be on my health insurance because yeah, if something happens, then you definitely, the bill is fat. And I would say, yeah, it's definitely education here it's been crucial. They really walk you through with all the processes, which is something I lacked back home. And I wish that this would be a more streamlined process among all the schools around like Europe. And I know that although this is like a shameful, let's say, self-promotion with the Youth Declaration, we also did, and actually our main regional thematic priority was capacity development. And we had 8 points. If you check on the website that we think many universities can benefit and improve all around Europe, going through creating more R&D centers, to creating more startup ecosystems, especially in metropolitan areas where you have more universities and you create clusters of innovation hubs, or just to create technology that engages all the youth all around Europe. So I think this is essential just to create all the infrastructure to make it easier for everyone to connect. Yeah, it's definitely beneficial, and you don't necessarily have to call it the second Silicon Valley, but a separate, different other thing that can bring way more benefit all around. So yeah.
Thank you so very much for your answers and especially for your participation on this panel. We deeply appreciate it. And the last but not least member of our panel today is Miguel Castillo Torres, representative of the World Tourism Organization. Welcome, Mr. Miguel.
Hello. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
As part of the World Tourism Organization, what is the positive impact that an international background and mindset achieved to traveling can have in youth education for the digital and interconnected future?
Okay. So the international background that traveling gives us helps us understand different points of view. Yes. So that because you meet different people, different cultures, you talk different languages with, and then you feel empathy with a lot of different people. Educating young generations with to be open-minded and traveling helps to be open-minded. Will make that the young generations are more respectful in the net, probably, because if they meet a lot of people and if they are able to be on the other points of view and to go in the other's perspective, there will be more respect on the internet. So this digital and interconnected future will create a new way to meet people before traveling and to have the experience that travel can give you before. So to have a practice, to say it like that, and meet other people from a lot of cultures that can be interesting for you without having the necessity to be with them physically.
Thank you, Mr. Miguel. Looking at the clock, we still have time for another round of questions, or at least we will try to. And we'll also attempt to fit in some questions from the audience within the allotted time. We'll go back to Mrs. Sabrina. Your role is directly related with media literacy education and effective youth participation. What are the main challenges in that regard, and which strategies are you implementing?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So I think the main challenge is first and foremost the level of youth participation and the seriousness we give to it. And I think in the work I'm doing and in the work my organization is doing, we take youth participation very seriously because we believe that young people should have a seat around the table by nature and not just be a nice to have in addition. And especially, as you said, when we're talking about media literacy education and other policy that directly have an impact on their education and their online experiences. So for us, youth participation should not only be a ticking the box exercise. Of course, we as adults, we need to protect children and young people, and we need to support their decision making, but we also have to listen to them, to their views and to their experiences, as I said before, to better understand what are they doing online and maybe why certain platforms or certain topics are so important and of interest for them. In this regards, maybe just two good practices I would like to share with you. So as part of the work I'm doing, we are facilitating the Better Internet for Kids project on behalf of the European Commission. And through this project, we were able over the past decade to establish a network of Better Internet for Kids youth ambassadors. So these are young people from across Europe between the age of 12 to 33, 34. And we try to engage this group as much as possible into our project activities on sort of every step along the way. Two examples here where we managed also to involve them into policy and decision-making discussions, which we feel is very important. The European Commission is currently revising the Better Internet for Kids strategy for the first time after 10 years. And before doing so, together with our network of European Safer Internet Centers, we organized last summer consultations, online or face-to-face consultation with children and young people across Europe. And we were also very happy that through our partners, we were also able to reach children in more countryside or rural areas. So this is also something very important when doing youth participation, to really make sure to be as inclusive as possible in this regards, also trying to reach the more vulnerable groups as well. So based on these consultations and the outcomes of these consultations, they were put forward to the colleagues at the European Commission, and they are taken into account when now revising the strategy, which is of course strategically and politically very important at a European Commission level. So this is one best practice. And then the other one is that we are also working on the Better Internet for Kids policy mapping. So here we are working together with representatives from different ministries across Europe, and we want to better understand what is the current situation of online child safety policies across the member states. And here again, we have an advisory group, and we always invite one of our big youth ambassadors to sit around the table when this advisory group meets. And here again, I think these are two also very good examples where youth participation was implemented at the beginning of the process, because we do often see youth participation happening, but young people are only usually coming in at the end when the end product is already done, and they are presented this end product, but they don't really have any impact in maybe changing or questioning the product. So we also want to try to really involve them from the early stage on, from the beginning of the process, which we feel is very important. It's very refreshing and important to have the voice of a young person or multiple young people as part of the discussion, especially when we are making decisions or policy decisions are made that have an impact for them personally. So these are just two examples, and I think there are other very great examples out there. But as I said, I think the approach and the common sense should be to have by nature young people around the table when policy discussions are happening as well. And as I said before in my at the beginning at my intervention, it should not be a ticking the box exercise to have young people at an event or at a table. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Mrs. Leila, we know you study computer science, but why did you decide to change your focus? And do you think many of your peers would feel in a similar way to shift their focus away from computer science?
Yeah, so just to clarify that point, I studied my GCSE, which is like the exam you take at about the age of 16, typically at the age of 12, because I was so interested in ICT and understanding how it works. And I was just so demotivated by the way all other 12-year-olds were being taught computer science that I needed to be pushed in that way. However, as I progressed through my academic career, I realized just how interested I was in like humanities and making change for the world and wanting to see social good. And I just felt that that aspect of technology wasn't reflected in the computer science curriculum, which here in the UK at least is typically maths heavy and very data driven. So it was only when the pandemic occurred and I had to choose what I wanted to study post 16 that I decided I wanted to pursue English literature, history and politics instead. And while I did have moments of doubts thinking that, you know, maybe I am cutting off reconnecting with technology, it was actually discovering the world of tech for good and social impact using technology that reignited my passion in tech and everything that I now do. However, I think that it's only when I tell my peers about opportunities with whether it's IBM or things like this that we're attending today, that they realize how much more there is to technology. And I think that instead of relying on teachers or parents to teach young people how to use social media or the world that tends to revolve around their mobile phone. We instead need to call on industry leaders to do just that, because they truly are the ones who are producing this technology, and who better to teach us? After all, they are our future bosses. Especially during the pandemic, a lot of people thought, oh, we're socially isolated. TikTok became a big thing. Banana bread baking became a big thing. But people weren't, and most people say, weren't realizing the power of technology and uniting people in the developments in medical technology and supercomputing, all of these things, because people are just so demotivated by the stigma, by the curriculum, by what they see typically in tech. And it's only proactive individuals like ourselves who benefit from these opportunities. So I think going forward, we really need to break down these echo chambers of opportunity, ensure that we bring industry and thought leadership and the United Nations Generation Connect into the classroom, where we're not only having a select few individuals representing the so-called voice of youth like we are here today, but rather we're widening that to ensure that our voices are heard and broadcast across every classroom, so that everyone feels they have their say at the table.
Thank you so very much for your insightful answer. And also, I have to ask, you are clearly incredibly active in engaging young people in technology. Namely, when you launched these students, the world's first IBM endorsed committee in 2020. Why, in your opinion, is youth inclusion so integral in the decision-making process and the wider development of quality digital education?
Sure, thanks for asking that. And to put it plainly, for the sake of time, I think that it's important, as just as you seek, say, healthcare advice from a medical professional, I think that we need to start seeking young people about how we want to lead our digital futures and our digital tomorrow, as we are the experts, say, of growing up in this digital first world. And to put it plainly, are the current industry leaders future bosses? I think that students are constantly evolving, whether that's the last 2 years in the pandemic or contrasting to the start of our academic careers right back in primary school to present day. If we don't create space for these meaningful narratives, I think that industry leaders will be making decisions about impacted societal groups without us, and therefore it will be likely that the outcome will be based on perhaps what industry leaders think are youth inclusive, but rather are really detached from the kind of concerns and experience of young people in the present day.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Back to Mr. Daniel Kalemi. What skills do you think young people need to learn in order to be ready to pursue a successful career in technology nowadays?
Yeah, it's definitely a complex thing, because like when you talk about the tech field, it's very diverse. I mean, nowadays technology can be applied in every single field, but I would say generally you should be more interdisciplinary. I think we should go away from this concept of, oh, you need to have strong technical skills, but that's not enough, I would say. Soft skills are definitely crucial, and I know this is a cliche all around that they say it's definitely important, because after you build a tool, you need to inform why this tool is important, and you need to say to your team that why there needs to be a decision making after you have this tool, and like they are interconnected. And I think probably a liberal arts college education in combination with maybe polytechnic institutes, which we have all around Europe, would be nice. But generally, like my experience in the Western Balkans, it's that once you start with a field, you no longer are able to change your field because you took that entrance exam on your last year of high school. And so it's very, very monolithic. And I think we should just make the educational system more flexible to allow to, although you're taking one skill, let's say computer science or maybe electrical engineer or whatever within the tech field, combine this with maybe a second major or maybe a minor where you interact those technical skills with maybe business or maybe law or maybe public policy or whatever. So I think this is crucial. This cross-pollination or this interdisciplinary is definitely crucial, I would say, to make young people succeed in the field.
Okay, so interdisciplinarity, interesting. And also, you have served as a co-organizer of the Albanian Youth Internet Governance Forum, as well as a tech mentor for the Southeastern European Dialogue on Internet Governance. Did you feel that youth had the skills, knowledge, and motivation to get involved in public policy making discussions?
The short answer is yes, but there is always this but. The thing all around the internet governance is that I've been in the field for almost 4 years, and what I see, this is a very tight-knit ecosystem. Wherever I go, I would find the same young people, which is good because people stay involved. This is nice. I mean, you're not coming in for once and then you disappear. But I just see it everywhere that this is not being diversified. Not more people as I would anticipate are coming into those decision-making tables. And I think it's crucial that we know that, for example, joining a big tech as a young student out of college would be maybe the sexy thing to do nowadays, which makes sense because, I mean, all business around the world account for like almost 80% of GDP worldwide. But again, they account for all for the same around 80% of like the global warming that they contribute into the world, and like all the other issues and lobbying governments and everything. So there needs to be an accountability part, and policy making is really important into this process. You can't just leave self-regulation. Although I love where the problem leads to find the solution with the businesses, this is impossible. You definitely need to have a governing body that oversees all these processes. So this is what I try to echo to everyone, that policy making is really important. And like, I have to confess that before joining as a computer science, I really loved going into public policy for my undergrad. I didn't join because I just know that all around the Balkans, like the governance is very corrupt and everything, and I just didn't want to be part of that. But that's not a solution, because by joining, you might just make a change. So although I continue with my computer science, and I know most of my peers just go into the tech fields because they pay more, I just come back every time to the public policy in another lens, let's say from the tech lens. So it's really important to just diversify the field, to have more youth being heard and be part of the stakeholder decision-making tables. And that just happens by just being part of it. And so I think for us who are here, we're definitely into the process. We're just trying to involve more people into the field. And I think this diversification will just make things better and will hold other stakeholders accountable, because it will just show that we care. And for as long as we echo that, people will have this sense of accountability. So definitely, youth should be part. They definitely have interest, but it should be more, definitely.
Agreed. And I fully love this quote: by joining, you just might make a change. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. And also, in order to also facilitate some questions from the audience, I will now ask the last question of today's panel for Mrs. Joanna Sheshu. In your opinion, what are the next steps for achieving quality education in Europe that is informed by an understanding of the digital future?
Thanks, Andre. And it's a very broad question, so I will maybe focus on 3-4 points, because there are many steps that we can take. So talking about the future, I've already mentioned the need to build bridges between students and professionals, and the fact that there is no quality education on digital without connectivity. And in Europe, there is still a discrepancy between, depending on where you're from and your social background. And I saw in the chat that this observation is also shared in other parts of the world. On another point, from my personal experience, and I remember that my generation, and maybe some participants here can relate to this, I got the chance to have the first IT lessons already in primary school in France, even if we didn't have any computer at home back at the time. And for example, we're using this floppy disks with this kind of disk storage in a square with low storage. And today we are using disk of 1-2 terabytes. We are using the cloud. So the storage is not something you can touch anymore. And my point here is that things are changing fast, and education on digital in Europe needs to be as fast as innovation to be timely for the generation. And thanks to these basic IT skills that I mentioned earlier, that we got in primary school, we learned, but also we got continuous digital education. And this helped us have this capacity to adapt, because without these basic skills, you cannot. That's why it's important to have these IT skills at an early age. And it has to be also, it's a prerequisite to be ready for the digital future. And this allows the young people to adapt and be more agile online. And in short, this enables digital literacy. Because we have to bear in mind that today 60% of the 9 years old are in schools which are still not digitally equipped. And this is a big obstacle for these basic digital skills. So there is a big room for improvement here. And my final point that we absolutely need to consider, but I think it will also be discussed in the next panel, is ensuring that girls and young women are equally represented in digital studies and career, because gender gap is an area of improvement. And today only 20% of employees in high-tech industries are women in Europe. The telco sector is outperforming in that field, because we managed to double this number. And I think Athena mentioned earlier the need to tackle the stereotypes, and we think it's very important, and that's why we are also engaging in projects to encourage more representation of women in ICT sector, such as, for example, Women for Cyber, with the objective to promote, encourage, and support the participation of women in the field of cybersecurity. And it's with projects like that that we can erase this gender gap and also be more inclusive. But I'm looking forward to hear the next panel on that.
We are also looking forward to hearing the next panel. But I think then I have to thank you very much for all of the speakers joining us today. Thank you, Ms. Sabrina Verbild. Thank you, Leila Violet Helm. Thank you, Joana Sheshu. Thank you, Daniel Calamy. And thank you, Miguel Castillo Torres. We very much appreciate your meaningful insights in the importance and challenges of quality of education for shaping a sustainable digital future where no one is left behind, and especially youth. With that being said, I'd like to open the floor for any questions the audience might have. And also, Celia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Andre, for an amazing moderation of the panel. And thank you very much to all the panelists for your meaningful insights. Indeed, quality of education is the fourth SDG. So it's something that all governments and all stakeholders care about. But the thing is that not any voice has to be left apart. So it cannot be something done just by grown-ups and stakeholders for youth, but youth has definitely to be involved in this discussion, as they are the ones that they are going to receive this education and digital skills, and they are the ones that are going to live in this digital future. So I really think it's very meaningful, all the effort that your agencies and your organizations are doing, from the SchoolNet Association that Sabrina talked about, since also to what the insights that Lela gave us on how young people are thinking and how are they evolving, and how does, for example, this group Generation Connect has to be included in the schools, not just like something very nice that young people are doing, but something that everyone can get involved in order to everyone feel really with a meaningful impact. Also, I want to thank a lot Mr. Miquel Castillo, as we all know that this year is the World Tourist Summit in this summer, right? together, it will also happen in this summer, the Generation Connect Global Youth Summit. So indeed, for Europe, this is a very meaningful and important year for youth. And as he said, tourism allows people to have an open mindset and get aware of the different backgrounds that other people, other youth around the world may have, not just by being connected in the internet, in the social media, but actually feeling the experience that this makes everyone be more open-minded and more empathic, and this will then be reverted in the social media. So it's something that it's indeed very, very much needed. And for Joanna, I think you made out a very important point regarding that. Indeed, the main step is to ensure connectivity and ensure useful infrastructures. In order to allow kids to have this skills development, they need to have the capacity, the connectivity, they need to have the equipment. So I hope that through the effort of organizations like yours and also public organizations, this connectivity is finally achieved. And now, after this short resume, I want to leave the floor for the audience. Please, if you want to ask anything to our speakers, just feel free to raise the hand, take the floor, or you can put it in the chat as you prefer. So please, go ahead. I can maybe start from one question that Joao posed privately to me. It's a question for Sabrina. So Joao is asking that if you would say better internet for kids is an example of a unified European youth engagement strategy with a space for local focus through the different safer internet centers. And he also wants to know if is this the key for the positive outcomes the platform has achieved in the last years. Please, Sabrina, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for the question, and hi to Joao, who is also one of our Better Internet for Kids youth ambassadors. Yeah, just picking on Joao, I think he's also another best practice example on what can happen if someone is eager and interested to learn and to engage with others, be it other young people, but also adults. As I said, we are really happy that every year we are able to invite new young people and start working with new young people in this program, and that they are able to join this ambassador program. I think these young people and especially colleagues like Joao or other like-minded ones are really good examples on how the knowledge can be transferred to other young people at national level. As I said before, I think for us it's also really important, and Daniel made a similar comment, is that sometimes you go to meetings and events and you see the same young people sitting around the table. It's very, very good that we have those young people who stay connected, who have the chance and the possibility to join these events. But I also feel, of course, it's important that these young people also sort of act as amplifiers, ambassadors, lighthouses within their countries. And I think Joao is a very good example, because I know that everything he has been able to pick up with us and the work he has been doing as a big youth ambassadors, he puts forward to his colleagues at national level and to other children and young people. So I think it's really important to empower those who are fortunate enough to have the possibility to join these meetings and events, who have the possibility from a very young age also to engage in these international in this international environment. It's absolutely not a given, of course, maybe the opportunity also of the pandemic was that events like today's events are happening online. So this again gives more opportunities for people who maybe are not able to travel across the globe to join and listen to these conversations. And I think someone else said it earlier before, I think awareness raising is also key. And of course, we need to do this awareness raising through the platforms that young people are using. So this is why also I said we should not shy away from social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, etc., because this is really where we can reach the young people and we can grab their attention. But of course, the success of our program heavily depends on the young people themselves. So I'm very happy that we have young people like Joao and others as part of this group who make this a constant success over the past years? Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for your meaningful answer, Sabrina. I think you have raised a very important topic, as also Daniel did. These people like us today that we are able to attend these events, we need to act and spread the word among our colleagues, among everyone, because some people, they just don't get involved because they don't really get to know these events are going on. So by sharing this in the social network and getting the advantage of this social network can be a great way to do so. So like everyone here, everyone from working from Generation Connect and other youth engagement groups have the chance to do this. And I'm sure that by using the social media, we are making these events and these initiatives much more easily to know and people to get engaged. So thank you very much for your answer. And now I have another question for Lela. So Lela, I know you have been in Tech for Good. So I wanted to know what has been the Tech for Good project that has the most profound impact or that you are most proud of. And after that, I would like to know what would you like to leave to our audience today. So please, you have these two questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I lost my mute button there. I mean, the last 2 years have been filled with so many incredible opportunities for me. And I really think that, as a lot of people, and myself included, have mentioned, being proactive and not reactive and seeking these opportunities is so great. The biggest project, I'd probably say, whilst there are many, I probably loved realizing that the industry is not just maths heavy and data driven, but instead I can be this proactive and proud humanitarian seeking kind of technology as an enabler for development and economic growth, instead of digital tools risking being like a force of inequality to some extent. I'd love to say that I think that a lot of my experiences within the ITU, so speaking at the Girls in ICTs panel and at the annual ITU GSR, have been really monumentous moments for me, in the sense that my voice has been just as welcome and valued as those of global heads of UNICEF or those of TikTok and Google. So that's been really great. For those of you who, well, no one will know, my father's actually Lebanese. So there was a catastrophic explosion that happened not long ago there. And being interested in Tech for Good and growing my network, I sought to use that not only for the good of society, but also to kind of look at how I can connect my interest in technology with my roots. And I worked on a project with the Red Cross, with IBM, and with the universities out in Lebanon, surrounding how we could use technology to kind of provide bottom-up solutions for the Lebanese people. There's a great deal of corruption, and say, for example, donations being delivered to Lebanon were being sold on shelves by the government and packages were being intercepted. So kind of digitizing the efforts of grassroots organizations and NGOs who are providing donations to the Lebanese people at their time of most need was a real full circle moment for me, and it felt good to be able to give back in that way. In terms of the message I'd like to leave with the audience would probably be echoing a lot of what I've already heard, in the sense that I'd love people to be the change that you want to see. So I often leave sessions like these feeling really motivated and ready to leave my mark, but I would just say, don't wait until some big light bulb moment. Instead, start to spark those meaningful conversations for change and really start small. You don't have to do something incredible immediately, but rather, as already mentioned, leveling, going up that ladder of youth inclusion and having your voice heard and that you're represented is so important. I think if I've learned anything, it's that being a change maker and pushing for social impact really isn't this one size fits all task, but rather it can be applying your digital skills to your local community, or developing in a hackathon, or, you know, there's just so many multifaceted approaches as going about this. And I'd really say as well that we're so lucky, as all of us as speakers here, to be so well connected with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that for people who are often lost or feeling pressured to find their social impact and find what it is that their purpose and passion is in life, it would be looking to the goals and seeing which one of those kind of wake you up in the morning or frustrate you and you want to see change within.
Thank you very much for these encouraging words, Lola. I think your point of view is amazing. Also regarding the that it's something that everyone can be related to, waking up every morning and trying to fight for just one thing, even it's just one thing, but you are really passionate about it, you will for sure make a change. And it, as you said, it doesn't need to be a great thing, but just little steps. But taking every day will for sure arrive to a meaningful goal. So thank you very much for these insights. And I think we still might we have 1 minute and a half, so maybe we have time for one more question. I know Andre wanted to ask something, so please, Andre, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. Also, before I get into my question, Veronica asked if the panel could please share their programs and projects. So please also do that in the comments. And my last question for this panel, I think it may be best addressed to Daniel. Given your proximity to emerging technologies, what is the emerging technology you are most excited about that is going to impact for the better education in the near future?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there is this like silver bullet technology. I would say it's like a combination of technologies, and probably let's say using them responsibly. And I think now it's a very huge problem around AI governance, because I think AI has already been rooted into many solutions in many big tech. So probably quantum technology will amplify what AI can do. I would say, yeah, it's definitely a combination of many of the technologies, and especially digital infrastructure is an important one, bringing the other billions into the network, especially in low resource regions. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. Definitely tonight, I'm gonna go to sleep very optimistic. So yeah, very inspiring, and thank you very much, everyone, for the insights.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your answer. And indeed, I think a combination of all the technologies we already have will be shaping the future, and also being aware of the governance that it's needed to be taken as the technology is developing so fast. Sometimes law gets behind, and there's no time for policymakers to really get a well insight of the possibilities of technology, and also the fear and the bad things that this technology can bring. So you bring a very meaningful insight, and thank you. And I think now it's time for another break. But first, I want to thank again all the panelists for your very interesting discussion. I know we have dealt with difficult topics, but you really got to the point, and I think you've given a very meaningful insight and interesting for everyone who is attending the session. So I want to thank you all once again. Get ready for our third and last session will be on the topic of gender equality and empowering girls and young women in the field of STEM, and ICTs. I think it will be a very meaningful and interesting session. So just 15 minutes break again, go again and refill your coffee or get some snack, and we will be waiting here for you. Thank you once again, and see you now.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Celia.
Together motivated students and young professionals from all over Europe.
When it comes to digital development, we have reached a point where future development in technology and politics are inseparable.
We are the generation most affected by the digital transformation.
We have grown up in the information age, engaging with technology in more and more ways.
We are aware of the challenges and opportunities provided by the ICT-EUR now and in the future.
We can take the lead in ensuring that digital transformation is safe, leaving no one behind and providing meaningful experiences to people in all aspects of their lives.
It is important for the youth to be recognized as stakeholders within the field of digital development to make sure that these processes are inclusive and representative.
We are now more than ever ready to take action and be part of shaping our digital future.
The result of our common efforts is the Youth Declaration, a representation of our hopes.
For a more inclusive, connected, and safer digital world.
For a digitally competent society and for better digital policies.
This declaration states the opportunities and challenges that we face as young adults, reflecting our optimism, energy, and natural familiarity with technology.
It brings together our experiences, knowledge, and ideas to work towards a common goal of supporting digital development in Europe through actionable solutions.
Most of all, this project shows that young people from across Europe can come together from a range of backgrounds and experiences to drive change.
But we will not stop there.
This is the first step towards increasing youth engagement and giving the youth a voice in the field of digital development.
We deserve a seat at the table where discussions on digitalization are taking place.
As Generation Connect, we are committed to playing an active role in shaping this new future together with the ITU and its membership.
We are excited to be able to contribute to the preparations of the World Telecommunication Development Conference 2021.
We look forward to the World Telecommunication Development Conference outcomes and implementation, accelerating the achievement of sustainable development goals.
It is important to engage the youth of today to solve the questions of tomorrow.
We have to prepare ourselves to face new challenges and opportunities in an ever-growing digital world.
The time to shape our future is now.
Let's make it happen.
Mean to be connected?
To be connected is being part of something bigger without physical barriers.
To be connected means to have a bond with someone or something that is established on common goals, interests, aspirations, or even feelings that leaves you with a good impression.
We are connected when we can communicate with anyone, anywhere.
It means to be open-minded, to have an opportunity to express my potential and build the inclusive and innovative digital.
This is what inspires me every day, the power of technology for good. Billions of people are still unconnected today, many of which are youth. Imagine what we could achieve if we connected all those eager minds to the power of digital. I believe it's more than time to build a future with youth, for youth. The ITU Generation Connect initiative imagines a world where global youth plays a central role in the digital development dialogue, alongside the leaders and other stakeholders. Digital is the new normal. And as the true generation of digital natives, young people are uniquely placed to harness the power of digital technologies and reshape the connectivity agenda.
Digital innovation is for every youth, everywhere.
Leaving no one behind means leaving no one offline.
Hi everyone and welcome. Welcome to our third session, which will be on girls in of gender equality of women and girls, empowering women and girls in the ICTs. I hope you all refilled your cup of coffee or you took your snack, because this session is really going to be very, very interesting. We have four incredible speakers, and we have also our moderator, which will be Miss Antonia Baskakov. Please, Antonia, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Celia. So this session will focus on the actions undertaken by youth to empower women and girls in tech. And we are very, very excited to speak to an incredible panel of powerful and impressive women. I'm so excited to speak to all of you. And let me also mention that this session will form the basis of our continued work for the International Day of Girls in ICTs to be held on April 28th. And so I'd love to start with you, Mauricia Abdul-Jalinda, who is the CEO of DataWorks Communications, and her work focuses on amplifying African women's voices in tech. And I'd love to hear why and how you became involved in that sort of work, and if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, absolutely. And hello, everyone. So wonderful to see you all. Sending you some warm greetings from South Africa. We still have quite a bit of sunshine here, so I'm hoping to share some of my sunshine with you today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, my name is Mauricia Abdul-Chilunda, and I am based in Cape Town, South Africa. And essentially, what we envision here is to make sure that irrespective of where African women are across the globe, that they can engage effectively in the internet space, in the digital ecosystem, to make sure that we shape an internet for us all. I started out with having my first computer when I entered university. So many of us come from a background where we have a very late introduction to the internet and to digital technologies. And so for us that do make it into university, because only about 5% of African and South African women make it into the university space, we then have an abrupt introduction to technology, to a computer, to having to write a whole essay on a laptop or computer when you've never really had that much exposure to it to begin with. So I wanted to start off with that background so that you know where we are coming from and also what we are hoping to contribute in this space. Please, if you have any questions, do pop them in the chat as we are engaging in conversation today. Back and forth, we are open, so do feel free to ask me any question that you might have. If possible, I'm going to share my screen just really quickly. Great. Right. One of the key areas that we have decided to focus on specifically is digital education and how it affects gender and the digital divide within our country and within our continent. So remember, coming from a backdrop where for the large part of your childhood, you're not engaging that much with technologies. And then all of a sudden you are exposed to having to now function as if though you have always been exposed to technology like your counterparts and still needing to catch up. It can be quite a challenge. So put on top of that being a female, it makes things even more interesting for you because remember, you are required to also wear many hats. So for example, I'm a CEO of my own company, but I'm also a mother. I'm also expected to make sure that I'm there at the home front, right? It's expected in our culture that you be both mother. If you are working, you need to balance with the two. You literally need to wear all the hats, right? And some of the challenges include, for example, our geographical location. Many of our communities, currently, we are still working on our infrastructure in order to remain connected on the internet. And so considering being a mom, needing to, for example, live in a rural community where you need to travel far distances to get to a space where there is a Wi-Fi connection can be challenging when you have to balance that with taking care of the kids, making sure that you are there for your husband or for your family, and also making sure that everything educationally goes well for you if you are studying at the same time. We also have a few hegemonic norms that are still in place largely. For example, within the rural community of Limpopo, in a study that we recently did, we realized that many of the men in the communities are still monopolizing the digital devices. So you would have a family structure where there's one cell phone. The main owner of the cell phone is the husband of the house. And if you as the wife would want to engage with anyone electronically, you have opportunities to have the cell phone when the husband is at home or when you have arranged for it. But otherwise, you don't have that free access to always have a cell phone with you, to always remain connected and to always engage. And yet still we are expected to always be active and to contribute meaningfully to the economy of our countries. And so that is a responsibility that we do carry as well. So I have some proposed solutions that we work with as part of the Elevator Africa Network. But I just wanted us to start off with that background for now, so that we have an idea of where we're coming from. And then as the questions flow, we will engage deeper on the solutions that we're working on and how we as young women are taking up our space and becoming active in a most innovative way to make sure that we shape the internet in a relevant way for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marisia. That was fascinating. What a comprehensive overview. I'd love to hear all of that from all the panelists, but unfortunately, I just want to remind all of us, we only have 1 hour and we have so many questions. And now I'd love to speak to you, Priya. So Priya Virchi, just as amazing and impressive, and you're the COO of Amy Health, and you're also the lead of Power Coders Madrid. So obviously, you've done so much in this area of work, and you've co-founded Power Coders, which is an organization offering courses on web development for refugees. And that is just one example of many of the impressive things that you've done. And it is against that backdrop that I would love to ask what you consider to be the role of women in socio-technological initiatives like the ones that you've been part of, and also how can women contribute their unique life experience to shape an inclusive and representative world of tech?
Hi, well, thank you for the very flattering introduction, and yeah, thank you for having me here. I think that's a super interesting question, and I'd say social entrepreneurship and sort of social tech is a really interesting opportunity for women to enter the tech sector. That's definitely been my path towards entering the tech sector, and especially so because I have a social sciences background. So I thought I felt like it was a very powerful combination of skills to really build a solution that focuses on social impact. And regardless of background, I think it's really important to have women in leadership or founder positions for sort of technological solutions for social impact, because these solutions are built to change lives, they're built to solve problems, and basically built to change the world. And so inclusivity and representation is absolutely crucial here to really build solutions that can change the world. And I'd say you can kind of already see this in the social entrepreneurship space. If you take a look at Forbes 30 under 30, the social entrepreneurship or social impact lists, I'd say there are definitely more women featured than if you were to take a look at the top 30 startup founders that are purely for profit. So I think that that's already a space that's sort of being entered by women, and I think that's really important. But that said, I think there's a lot of work to do. It's definitely been seen that in the social entrepreneurship space, men tend to fundraise more successfully than women. Sort of men-led projects on social entrepreneurship are more featured in the media. And I think when we talk about sort of women in tech, it's always really important to also note that there are different experiences within women in tech. And if you come from a minority background or a lower socioeconomic background, it's a lot harder. And so I think it's a really promising sphere. And I think women can really make a ton of inroads and a lot of change. But it's really important to build structures that support this, that empower women, and ideally also build social entrepreneurship communities for women, to really build on these role models and to understand that there are a lot of really, really amazing solutions out there, and women that are kicking butt at it as well.
Thank you so much, Priya. I also love you highlighting intersectionality and how there are different experiences for all women in tech. And that also kind of leads me to our next speaker, Mariam Jam, the Chief Sustainability Officer and founder of I'm the Code. And something that we've already touched upon is that as many other areas of our society, tech is a field dominated by a very, very exclusive group of mostly white men. And there's a book called Invisible Women by Caroline Prieto Perez. And she highlights how men shaped and conceptualized most of the systems we live in on the basis of their own lived experience, from politics to medicine and also tech. And so obviously they created systems for all of us that are only informed by one experience and consequently only works for one group of people. And so when women are excluded from those decision-making processes, their experience does not inform how the tech we use works. And why is that a problem, not just generally speaking, but also specifically relating to the field of tech?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Lady Mariam Jam. I am the founder of I Am the Code, and I sit on the board of the Global Visionary for ITU. I think to answer your question, it's great to hear from all the speakers. I think I want us to go back probably 10 years or 20 years before where we are today. 20 years ago, probably I'm a bit older woman now, but 20 years ago, we wouldn't have this conversation, for example. I remember 25 years ago, before my son was born, I was telling the world to white men, actually. I was telling them that Africa has got innovation and technology at that time. And everybody was telling me, oh, why don't you focus on poverty? Why don't you focus in feeding Africa? Why do you want to talk about innovation and technology? And I remember, going to Thailand, where ITU was actually, organizing many competitions for young boys and girls, entrepreneurs to come in and showcase their solutions. And those entrepreneurs now are in their 30s. And I remember, many Africans, young Africans and young women from Colombia and from different countries, and coming to present their solutions. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that we can complain as much as we like, but we need to start creating and just taking actions. And what we do at I Am the Code, which is one of the first African-led global movement to teach young women and girls how to code by the year 2030. Our mission is to get 1 million women and girls to learn how to code. And people need to understand that coding is not very, very easy. And so I didn't go to school, for example, but I was born in 1970s. Probably, I don't know if some of you were born in that year, but if you were born in 1970s, 1980s in Africa, we wouldn't even talk about computers and all of that. But Africa, we had lots of intellects, especially in my country, Senegal, where I was born. We have a lot of intellects who are doing, President Senghor was born in Senegal. We have a lot of intellects in Africa who were actually talking about maths and science and technology and innovation before anybody talks about it in this era. I'm sitting right now in the United Kingdom talking to you, but I didn't go to school. I learned how to code 7 coding languages in 2 years in my local library. And what we do at I Am the Code now is travel all across the continent to teach girls how to code. And the reason why it's important to talk about coding in a very basic way, let's forget about infrastructure and content and connectivity, because that's the job of the ITU, that's the job of the United Nations to bring connectivity across rural Africa. It's the government's job to actually invest into some of the solutions. But if you are right now a teenager, a young woman who's 18 years old in Africa, in the next 8 years, you're going to start looking, what am I going to do? Who am I going to work for? If you don't have the 21st century skills you need right now, it's going to be very unlikely for you to get a job. Education is very expensive. Wealthy Africans have probably a way to educate their children abroad, outside Africa, or inside Africa, if you are running a private school in the continent. But if you are an African person growing up in rural Africa right now, your chances are very, very limited. So that's why at I Am the Code, we decided to create something very, very fundamental, which is really a gift to the continent. A digital platform. I can share that with you if you want now. But it's really a massive gift to the continent. We're going to launch this on the 28th of February, 28th of April, and it's one of the largest digital platform in the world for the African continent, and for all girls actually growing up in marginalized communities, where as a young girl now, you can sit down and learn how to code 4 coding languages within 12 weeks. And the reason why it's important to talk about this in this platform, because on the 28th of April, you're going to get so many organizations talking about ICT, digital literacy, young women and girls coding, so many networks. But it's not going to help the young girl who's now 15, 17, 18 years old in Africa. But our platform is going to just do that. So you can now go into this platform, learn how to code, get your lab, test your code, get your certification, and be mentored by top coders in the world. This is so important right now for us to have this conversation. We can create as many networks to create awareness around coding, around digital skills. It's very good. It's very noble. But at the fundamental need of the young girl or the young boy growing up across Africa, they need skills. Skills equal money. You don't have the skills, you can't get a job. It's very simple, right? And so I think I just want to share that very quickly to emphasize in the narrative, the conversation, building connections, but making sure we give the boys and the girls growing up across Africa and across all the world the tools they need to learn basic coding skills, but also make sure they understand the 21st century skills. So we don't have this conversation about the white man this and the person this. It's not about race or gender. It's about making sure the systems are provided to the boys and girls growing up all across the continent. And what we do finally is we are working with marginalized communities. We must not take refugees as a scapegoat to give our solutions. They're human beings. You can see the Ukraine crisis right now, where we have skilled people looking to get jobs, but unless we provide the tools they need to be part of the global workforce, it's not going to work. So I just want to stop there, but I would like for the 28th of April, the ITU and all the networks and communities to focus on skills. We need to upskill, reskill young people. So when they're in their 22, 23 years old, like my son's age, looking for a work, they can get a job they need.
Thank you so much. For highlighting the importance of the skills equaling money aspect. And I am actually gonna talk about the different side that you just mentioned. So the role that kind of organization, institutions, and also politics play in that, which is why I'd love to bring in Giselle Frederick, the Impact Tech founder, yet another founder, and also former delegate to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. And you're not only an entrepreneur, but also an advocate for tech for good and a representative for the Commission on the Status of Women. And I would love to hear what are the actions undertaken by this commission to empower girls and young women to develop their digital skills. So what we've just heard about. So what role does the commission play in that?
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I have been in tech for quite a number of years, actually. I'm so pleased to be here on a youth forum because youth activism is one of the things that I love the most, getting the youth engaged so that they can create solutions, better solutions for their futures. And there are quite a few challenges that a lot of young women are facing, or young women and girls are actually facing when it comes to tech. And some of which are addressed within the UN Commission on the Status of Women, but some others are actually being experienced at a more grassroots level, and they're not yet picked up by larger organizations such as the UN and other organizations. So my background is within tech and tech entrepreneurship. I've been through many, many years of innovation. I am most passionate about impact tech and building technology that better or positively impacts communities and finding ways that marginalized communities or underserved communities can participate within technological solutions. And that includes a large part of my advocacy around getting women and girls, especially from minority backgrounds as well, involved and engaged. So we've come a long way. I think it's important that we recognize how far we've come. When I entered the tech world, let me see, how long has maybe around 15 years. Even 15 years ago, we didn't have the number of women in tech that we have now. I'm originally from the Caribbean, but I am also British, so you may hear a little bit of a British accent. When I started my career and I entered the field of tech, it was only in the early 20s, 20%, there were women in tech. So I think it was around 23 or 24%. And since there, over the last, let's say 10 years or 15 years, we've seen that grow to almost 30%. It's not nearly at all equal in terms of men and women in tech. But I think the growth is positive. There have been quite a few initiatives that support women getting into tech, various tech fields. But some of the bigger barriers that are being addressed are actually how that culture, the tech culture and the bro culture is being, we need to change that culture and the way technology is marketed to women. And that is something that's currently happening. We see a lot more role models around us. So we see a lot more women in women lists. So top women in tech list across the UK, Europe regions, which is very positive. We've seen a lot of the toxic culture being addressed. Some of it, unfortunately, through movements like Me Too. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately for the victims. We had these positive movements, which is starting to change that toxic culture, so women feel a bit more included. We also have seen an increase in the type of opportunities being advertised. In the past, I think when you think technology, we were focused around programming and a lot of those areas, data science. But now we're beginning to see all of those adjacent industries being marketed as well, and being marketed just as much as the programming fields. So be it digital marketing or user experience design or QA, all of these fields are just as important as the programming fields when it comes to tech, as well as innovation. Entering tech through innovation it's also a really big area and an increase as well. There have been other issues around the advancement of careers that are being addressed. Women tend to have a natural pause to start families. This is something that we just have to do because our population depends on it. there's nothing that we can do about it. We are the ones carrying the babies, so therefore we have to take a break to have the babies and come re-enter the workforce. What has been happening, however, is that a lot of women have seen their career negatively impacted because of this break. And there have been quite a few spotlights being shown on this in the past. And in the UK, I know that we created even indexes to help better advance women that are being impacted by these issues. So we have returner programs for women that are leaving the workforce to pursue family or for long absences. And when they come back, then they essentially, it's like a graduate scheme almost to re-enter the workforce. And this has been positive because it allowed us to capitalize on the skill set that we have within our society, so that the women they're not just out in the home, but they're able to re-enter and rejoin the workforce at a high level, the level of which they left, or a little bit higher. There are also indexes around pay for women and getting access to equal pay, because this was another area. It's like, why should I come in and do the work and not be paid, or be paid 40% of the salary that someone else is being paid that's sitting right next to me, when I had exactly the same qualifications, the same skills, and contributing just as much to the team. So there have been a lot more indexes around that to ensure that women get access to equal pay for the work that they're doing. And of course, I mentioned it a little bit before, other changes are the role models. The importance of visible role models cannot be underestimated. Be it women that are very senior in technology, be it women that are entrepreneurs, that have made the leap from one industry to another. It's just so important to have those. And the UN Commission on Status of Women have been advocating for quite a lot of these, in addition to education. So rolling out more educational programs, providing more access to women, so that they can learn these digital skills, so that they can become freelancers and entrepreneurs in their own rights. So yeah, these are just some of the things that are being done. It's not at all everything, but it's so much more than what was being done previously, I would say, in the last 10 years. So I'm very pleased to see the progress. We're not there yet in terms of parity or equality, but I am pleasantly surprised by the trends, and we're working towards achieving a more equal presence in tech.
Thank you so much. That was so insightful. And now I would like to speak to Lady Miriam again, and ask about, so we've just heard about some of the ways how barriers can be addressed, and but also we heard about the work that has yet to be done. And I'd love to know what do you consider to be the biggest barriers for women in tech, and also what can we do to overcome them? What is our role in that?
I mean, that's a very good question. There are many barriers. First of all, I think one of the biggest barrier I see in the world of tech, and doing this for 25 years now, it's a very long time, is that the narratives, right? So we are very comfortable in some of the narratives for women and girls across the world. And so, we elevate only few people, and then we leave the rest. And there are some millions of young girls who don't have access to connectivity, for example. They don't have access to content. They don't have access to infrastructure. But it's our mentality, it's our way of, being comfortable, and we probably can train 100 people, 200 people. The data doesn't speak to itself. And I see this across the world. I work quite a lot around on data issues and how do you measure impact when it comes to women and girls being in technology. If you are based in the United Kingdom, here, it's very difficult to even talk about tech and innovation, because only few people are elevated when it comes to the tech sector. I go to schools in the UK here where I meet young white girls who are probably in private school or in council estates. most of them, probably will not end up doing technology because it's the way tech and science and STEM subjects are talked about. And if you go to Africa, where, my continent, Senegal, where I come from, for example, where many young girls don't have access to devices, for example, they don't have access to content. Data is very, very expensive. In what the young girls are doing. So we have so many barriers. So what we do at the World Economic Forum, I sit on the Council for Education 4.0. We have designed a new taxonomy of languages. How do you make sure that we change the narratives around women and girls in tech, but also how do you make sure we change STEM? What is really STEM? What do we mean by STEM? And who actually have access to STEM? And the word STEM is used everywhere in every single report. If you want to get funding, just use the word STEM and coding. By all means, you'll get the funding you need, but there is no lot of impact, when it comes to science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And we have added at I Am the Code art and design, because it's really important we get young women and girls to be part of the art and design processes. If you want to get the next UX designers in the world, the people who are going to be designing solutions around climate change, gender equality, peace and justice today, what you see, we have to have young women and girls in those sort of rooms. And so the entire 21st century skills need to be redesigned and need to be rethought. And so this is how we're going to remove the barriers. We have a lot of barriers. And I will say the first thing we need to remove is a language, and really changing the language of STEM, of women in tech, Black girls coding and women girls coding, all of that is really changing, it's actually stopping people progress. Because, I'm a typical example of somebody who is not part of the mainstream. I didn't have degrees in Cambridge and Oxford and all of this PhD nonsense. But I learned how to code 7 coding languages in 2 years, as I said earlier. I'm a full stack developer. I spend all of my time designing solutions for the world. And so it's important that we think about the girl who's sitting in the refugee camp in Kenya right now, in a refugee camp in north of Kenya, that she can become a coder. A refugee is not written on her back. She can learn how to code and sit down in Kakuma refugee camp and really develop an app or a website without no one knowing that she's from South Sudan, right? And so it's really important we change the narratives, but make sure that we are more inclusive, but also educate ourselves in what's happening across the world. And finally, if you want to remove the barriers, is collaborate. Really, we need to collaborate and learn from our peers, and really understand that the world of tech and innovation has no gender, no age, no race, and no class. No one owns it. You just need to know how to code, and you can build anything you like. That's one of the barriers we can take out.
Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of changing the narrative and how we use our language. I'd love to speak about another issue that we've kind of touched upon, which is just power dynamics, because the fact that we do have the existing narrative is also because the people, because an exclusive group designed the narrative. And now I'd actually like to ask this question, to give it to Mauricia. What can you say about the potential and role of tech in redistributing power more equally, and also how we as young women, but also maybe just not highlighting this very aspect, how can we contribute to making that happen?
Absolutely. I love that question. It's so exciting to just think about the fact that we get to change, right? That we get to be in the forefront of it. Wow. I have quite a few ideas and they're rambling off in my head, but I really want us to think together in a room. And this is not silos to just us as women coming up with innovative solutions, but really everyone. This is when it comes to being actively involved in making technology more accessible to women in remote areas, making sure that whatever your background might be, does not impute on your ability to access technological innovations, and making it work for you is very key in making sure that we is very key in this question. another point that I think is very important for all innovators, whether male or female, is develop your solution to be relevant to who you're developing it for, right? And when think about, imagine and see a young woman who has girls, boys, young children, but also nieces and nephews that she needs to take care of in a rural community where she would need to travel for 1, 2, or 3 hours just to get to an internet connection. How can your solution cut down on her travel distance that she needs to take, where she can be at home, for example, and still get the same accessibility that she would have had to travel 3 hours to reach, and still be able to see to everything else that she needs to see to culturally in her household, right? We need to make sure that we have solutions that understand the need first before we think of making it look pretty or attractive. We need to develop technology that responds to the practicality of the situation of our young people in rural communities. One thing that in my closing, I would say technology trumps distance. Technology trumps barriers that historically would have kept us out of the loop, that historically would have meant that no solution was possible, or that solutions would be only for a few women in our communities. So when we look at making, well, technology really will and is changing the narrative within our communities. What we need to do in going forward is making sure that it's relevant, that it speaks to the needs specifically, and know that needs differ geographically, right? So whenever we are developing a solution for a community, first understand the need of that community and then develop around that. We cannot generically copy and paste our solutions widespread just as it is. So remember, speak to the need and make sure that, there's so many points, but make sure that you have the human in mind. Make sure that you understand who you are speaking to, that simple, and I'm thinking in Afrikaans, but simple is sometimes better than having a lot of information that could confuse or overwhelm who you are seeking to serve. So think of having a slim, simple solution that can address the need. So more quality, less quantity when it comes to our innovations going forward. Thank you so much.
I've been taking so many notes. You said so many great things, and quality over quantity, and just speaking to the need and staying relevant and actually addressing the issues of our time. I'd actually love to ask you a follow-up question, just because you've basically just addressed that very issue, but the differing needs that we have geographically, how do we strengthen awareness for that aspect? How do we make sure that it's not like how do we raise awareness for what you've just described, basically? Yeah.
What I've learned is engagement and making it, engagement is key. One thing, whenever we take any solution that we feel can serve a community into a certain space, we make sure that in all of our communication strategies, that the community is part and parcel of it and involved from the word go. So once you make sure that you understand the community and how they function, then identify key actors within that community that can really contribute towards your developmental team. Many of the women, many of even the young men in the various communities that we serve are keen to get involved, they just don't know how. So the minute you can say, bring them on board and say, listen, this is what we would love to serve you with, or this is the solution that we are looking to develop. How will this serve your community? What do you see as relevant? Because sometimes the way we envision a solution assisting a community is not necessarily how they would see that very same solution serving their community. So have them see the innovation and get involved from the word go, and then have them find out what they see. If you are creating a reading app, what would they use the reading app for in their community? Maybe it would be to communicate their various arts or stories that they've self-developed, because we have many storytellers that don't have a platform to communicate on. So from the get-go, collaborate with the community, find out what they see, and then go from there.
Thank you so much. And I also want to say something that kind of comes to mind when you speak is this slogan of nothing about us without us. I feel like that kind of captures what you've just said. And Priya, I'd love to speak to you again. Now we've spoken of that issue of visibility so often, and obviously all of you create visibility. All of you have become that kind of role model that we're speaking about. And so Priya, you have also been part of one of the mentioned lists of ELD's successful women under 30. And all these lists can be so crucial just to create visibility, because at the end of the day, you can't be what you can see, right? And just from your position, I would love to hear, maybe you can also touch upon like the challenges you personally had to overcome, but my main focus would be, do you have any advice for people, for young women who want to follow your path, who have seen your work and now think, now I can also be someone who works in this field?
Yeah, definitely. I think firstly, when it comes to sort of advice and challenges faced, I think the speakers before me make really important points about access and equal access. So I think that's like a really important challenge to keep in mind. In terms of, the advice I would give, I would say that sort of maybe one of the bigger challenges that I face, and I think a lot of women in tech face, it's not exclusive to that group, but is this feeling of imposter syndrome. And I think it's I don't think it's limited to women in tech or social entrepreneurs that are women, but I think given the social norms, the structures, the stigmas, it definitely is a role that is disposed towards building a sense of imposter syndrome. And I think that's something that I personally experienced, and it very much limits your ability to be super confident, make quick decisions, take risks. And I think that sort of an advice I would have for sort of young women wanting to enter the tech sector is to be aware that that is something that everyone feels, and to really try and, I think, firstly note it. So to self-reflect and say, maybe I'm feeling less than or not confident enough, or thinking that I don't deserve this position because of my skills, and actually to really recognize that imposter syndrome is very common. But then I would very much highlight the importance of communities. So sort of women supporting each other and celebrating successes. And I think that's really where visibility comes in as well. But also understanding that your achievements are never going to be perfect, no matter how high the expectations of the sector are. One thing that's been very helpful for me is that, when I feel stuck on a decision, or I feel, a really strong sense of imposter syndrome, I always ask myself, what's the worst that can happen if I get this decision wrong? Or, I maybe mess this up a little bit. And, the answer is never as extreme or anxiety inducing as how I feel at that moment. And I think that's been really helpful because, if I get this wrong, I will die. It's worth, just going forward, making that decision, and then learning from it if you do get it wrong. But, you can't expect perfection from yourself. You can't expect always to sort of reach a level of success that proves that you're good enough. you're sort of doing important work. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind.
Thank you so much for speaking of the imposter syndrome. And yeah, I'd love to, I love that we have addressed kind of the individual level, but also the structural level that we've talked about before. And actually, I want to go back to the structural level again and speak to you, Giselle. So you've heard what some of the speakers have mentioned and identified as their main challenges or barriers that they have identified. I'd also love to hear your perspective, but then specifically understand, do you feel like those exact challenges and barriers are sufficiently represented and actually like, do they align with the issues that are represented at, for example, the Commission on the Status of Women? Like, is there a discrepancy or does it actually overlap? So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the challenges are represented, I would say. Challenges in terms of connectivity, challenges in terms of education and getting the skill set, getting access to the resources and the devices, as well as nurturing the women and as entrepreneurs. These are all areas that are being that I think are genuine. Well, of course they're genuine areas. They're being brought up by the women that are experiencing them and they're tackling the problems. But there are areas that are often highlighted and marketed, and there are areas that are being addressed. I think in terms of other areas, I think we can definitely do a bit more around some of the marginalized communities, not just in, let's say, Africa, but in Europe as well. I think it was Lady Mariam that mentioned the teaching women to code while in refugee camps. We have this massive problem now of where we have a lot of, in Ukraine, where we have quite a lot of people fleeing Ukraine. A lot of them would need access to the job market in Europe. And we can focus a bit more on some of the areas, some of the communities here that are disadvantaged within Europe as well. And I think it isn't all about the disadvantage elsewhere. And although I think it's obviously very important, because I think Lady Mariam is speaking about her community where she's coming from. But there are so many of these little pockets of communities across Eastern Europe that need support, and we can bring those women into the workplace and we can provide them with access to the education they need and the skills that they need so that they can lead a better life and they can get access to the resources to make their lives a bit better. And I think we need to shed a light on some of those areas across Europe as well, because we're doing well on some perspectives, and in others we're not doing so well. We're focused on others, and I think we can do more to shed a light on some of the problems in Europe. If that makes sense.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you. And I feel like we've covered so many topics and issues, from visibility to structural barriers and individual challenges and possible solutions. And so I've been lucky enough to ask you all these questions, and now I'd love to open the floor for other people to potentially ask questions. And with that, I'd give back to Celia, who would moderate that part of the discussion. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much, Antonia, for this great session moderation. And I want to also thank all of the speakers for your great insights, the great messages you have leaving, and how have you given different perspectives as you come from also different continents, not just European continent. So we can also address the issues and the challenges and the activities that you are taking in those places. First of all, I will, as you all know, the topic of the International Girls of ICT this year is regarding access and safety. We've already touched upon this topic a little bit, but I would like to address directly to Lady Mariam, if she can extend a bit her opinion in this topic and give us some meaningful insights. Please, Lady Mariam, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much, all the speakers and Giselle and everyone. And I think there's, when I join these calls, people expect for me to be very optimistic. And I apologize if I sound, pessimistic, because it's not good out there for boys and girls. So I do apologize if you were expecting something rosy from my side. And I think one of the biggest things we should really think about when we have these big activities across the world, addressing young women and girls, we all going to become adults and women leading the world. But when it comes to the Girls ICT Day, which the ITU organized so beautifully, but I think this is the time right now for us to be more transparent and honest in what's going to happen. When COVID-19 started, I was in a Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. We just need to think about a refugee camp where there are over 200,000 people that lives there. And the entire African continent have over 500,000 people who are refugees. They're from South Sudan, Burundi, Kinshasa. I mean, it's really terrible, a place for a young girl to grow up, right? And so today when you woke up, you probably had your sanitation, you had tea, water, hot water, breakfast, you had everything you want. Because you are privileged, like me. I had hot water this morning. I had shower this morning, right? But the girls I'm talking to, they don't have access to this, right? Number one. Number two, connectivity is so expensive for those girls all across the world, right? The Ukraine girls, my girls in Ukraine, right now, they're in Poland and in Belgrade. Because for the last 2 months, if you really think about 8 weeks, their life has been turned upside down. Right? They are really in difficult situations. So I think we have a massive opportunity as a world to think about women and girls' mental health all across the world. Education is not just an African problem, it's a global problem. Connectivity, having every single day when you wake up, having access to your mobile phone, going on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Facebook, it is a privilege. My girls are being violated because of connectivity. They have to exchange sex. They have to be violated verbally, physically. They have to be blackmailed, bullied, groomed to have access to the internet. Can you imagine? This is the truth. So, and the second component is their safety. The safety of young women and girls is at stake. So we can talk about coding and skills as much as we like globally this day as we celebrate, but we really need to think about what can we do to invest in infrastructure, in content, in connectivity, but also meaningfully support young women and girls. If you are 11 years old today and you're going to become a 21-year-old girl, you're going to become a 31-year-old woman, you're going to become a 41-year-old woman. Like me, I'm 47 years old. Society let me down when I was 11 years old. I'm now 47 years old. So we need to think about time. Time is absolutely critical as we invest and as we look forward. The ITU is looking at the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. 8 years from now, if we don't invest in young women and girls' safety, it's going to be very difficult for us. So all the amazing speakers who spoke today and all the wonderful women who are elevating young women and girls, making sure everyone has got connectivity, infrastructure, and content, and platform, and spaces, and connection, and network, I mean, just name it. But unless we, as a community of good, willing people, we put humanity at the center of innovation, we are not going to be there. And this is my call today to world leaders, to really make sure we invest in South Africa, in Mombasa, in Kenya, in Senegal, wherever you are, in Ukraine, in Belgrade, wherever you are in the world, please, if you're listening to this message today, you have to invest in young women and in young girls. And the ITU, and I'm a very lucky person to sit on the board of the ITU, Young Global Visionaries, it is important that we invest today. I will say it one more time. We have to invest in young women and girls growing up all across the world. That's my message for world leaders in this ITU Girls ICT Day 2022.
Thank you very much, Lady Mariam, for this impressive message. I think you've addressed a very important and very extreme topic that sometimes it's just about talking, but in this topic, it's not just about talking, but acting and taking action. And all the persons that, as all here, we have this connectivity, we have these resources, making them possible for other girls, for other young people that they are unprotected, they are all out there. So we need, I have a skinny, really, I was very impressed of your message, so thank you very much. We will also address this topic for sure in the International Regional Day of Girls in ICTs. We will share this message so even more people can listen it and always repeat it until at one point I really believe that by people like you, like all of us here, we will finally make the change that we want to see for these girls that now they are 11, but I hope that when they are 31, they can say, some people, they cared about me, they make the change, and now I have a better life that I was supposed to have. So thank you very much for this message. We will sure put it after in the 28th of April, so more people can listen to it. Thank you very much, really. And now I think we also have 5 more minutes for one more question. I know Katerina wanted to ask some questions, so please, I can see your hand raised. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. So this question is for Marisha. And first of all, thank you for your wonderful and insightful speech. And I'm really impressed. This was really exciting. And so thank you for being here. And I wanted to ask you, when young girls learn that they can make a difference, that change is possible, does their attitude towards difficulties change? Are they more optimistic, or do they simply change their attitude towards difficulties?
That is such a fantastic question. And the answer, to my delight, is yes. Once, oh gosh, and when the character within the young girls change, they are almost ignited for action. So they want to know, okay, how can I use I can call it a newfound power. How can I use my knowledge that I have now, my skills that I have now, my connections that I have now to make more opportunities available for my friends, for my communities, for my cousin who is, a year younger than me, or whatever the case may be. We call them our juniors. But one thing that I can just reiterate is a resounding yes. Once the young women are activated, once they get the skills, the information, once they are connected, they want to go. They want to go. They just want to know where can I influence and what can I do? Many girls, for that matter.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your answer, Ms. Mauricia. I'm very pleased. And I would like to address anyone else from the audience. If you have more questions, please feel free and take the floor, or just write them in the chat so I can address. And otherwise, if I can see nobody is raising their hands or posting nothing in the chat, I think we can say thank you once again to all the speakers, to Antonia for moderating the session, Miss Lady Mariam, Miss Giselle Frederick, Miss Mauricia Abdul, and also Miss Priya Borsi. It was a pleasure to have all these great young women, powerful women, and very impressive women today with us. You have left a very insightful, and we are privileged to have your messages here. So I want to thank you all for your contributions. We will hopefully stay in touch for the next sessions for the Girls in ICTs Day, and whatever the future brings, that we can address attention on this interesting topic. So thank you everyone for participating. And now I will leave the floor to Mr. Jaroslav Ponder so we can have some closing remarks. Please, Mr. Jaroslav, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Celia, and thank you very much, all colleagues. Congratulations to the all envoys who are working passionately on making this event so colorful and so inspiring. I was staying during the whole event, connected and listening to the all conversations in order to be able to already take note on those suggestions which we have to take into account while we are implementing at the regional level, while we are planning some activities, and while we are discussing with the policymakers their proceeding on making the digital future even much more adapted to the needs of the young generation. So also thanks a lot to Excellency Agne, Deputy Minister of Transport and Communication from Republic of Lithuania, Sabin Sarmash, our designated chairman of the ITU Policy Plenipotentiary Conference 2022, who is also the member of the Romanian Chamber of Deputies in Romania. And their presence means really a lot because we have direct link to those who are really designing the policy making. And also, of course, congratulations to the European Commission, specifically to Maria Gabriel for launching amazing initiative on the European Year of Youth, to which our event, today's event, is contributing with the outcomes. So thank you very much to all of you for providing so many observations during these 3 sessions, with one focusing on engagement, the second on the youth voices in quality of education towards the digital future, and finally the last session which we have just had on the gender. So we learned about the mechanism for meaningful youth involvement in the policy making, the challenges that could be faced, and what solutions could be proposed to achieve meaningful contribution from the youth to the youth. And beyond that, one of the main takeaways of this panel has been that having the youth at the round table of the decision making should be must and not just nice to have. And I think that this is something what we are trying to implement. This is not easy. The institutional setups are learning. I was very much passionate, a young employee of the UN system when we were introducing the multi-stakeholder approach. And so ready to do this step, it took some time to recognize that the need of the multi-stakeholderism in any kind of decision-making process. And this is similar to this, what we are trying to achieve together on the youth engagement participation, and we hope that it will continue. We then also analyze how meaningful quality education could be delivered and what role ICT could and should play to build a cohesive and inclusive digital future where ICT is leveraged for the benefit of everyone. A key outcome has been the fact that to achieve the connectivity that will allow young people to have access to the quality education, a solid communication infrastructure is needed, and therefore together with well-prepared teachers and trainers, it would create the fully fledged value proposition, and we have to work on that. Finally, during the last session, we had a great chance to hear the contributions from successful female leaders in the private sector and that have brought concrete results in the field of ICT and how they are contributing to achieve gender equality in this tech field. One of the main takeaways during this session is that over the last years, the growth of women in tech has been positive, but we are yet there where we should be. So more has to be done, and it's crucial to raise attention on this topic, present roles models, and contribute towards the achieving real equality and inclusion in this ecosystem, encouraging girls to start their path in STEM and ICTs. So, dear colleagues, many different ideas, a lot of inspiration. We hope that you will be following our activities and also contributing. Don't hesitate to reach out to us to take a look how the youth could even more be engaged in the European activities of our office, but also those activities going beyond the boundaries of the Europe. And I would like to take the moment to thank especially those who are coming from the other regions, who brought also the perspective of the other regions, because very often being in Europe and enjoying a lot of privileges of the developed economies, we forget that the world doesn't look like that everywhere. And so thank you very much for that. And we should build upon those suggestions. To conclude, dear colleagues, I extend once again many thanks to all speakers and the moderators for your contributions and relevant experience you have brought to this table today. Your motivation and commitment resonate strongly in us and demonstrate once more that and the engagement of the youth at the high-level discussion and decision-making process is today more necessary than ever before. I would like to convey a special thanks to the Generation Connect Europe group for organizing this event, and to our session moderators, Andrea, Andre, Antonia. Finally, thank you to our ITU technical team, that is our technical moderator, Ross Maluli, for supporting us today and making this event run smoothly, as well as to the captioners, as well as to our youth facilitator in our team, Celia Falcon, who has been patiently guiding you, us, and also our community how to engage and to participate. So congratulations, Celia, for such a great event. Thank you for your time and participation. Before I'm wishing you a wonderful day, of course, the few reminders: please make sure that you are part of the Generation Connect. Please make sure that you are not missing the celebration of Girls in ICTs and contributing to this process. And also, please don't miss many of different updates coming from the youth envoys of the Europe region and the other regions as well, who are sharing and engaging the others to let the community grow. So we hope that you're becoming a part of the change, and from today on you will be also feeling as the youth ambassador worldwide. So thank you very much, and with this I would like to thank you for this great event. And over to you, Celia.
Well, thank you very much, Jaroslav, for your nice words, for these impressive outcome remarks. And just to follow up with your message, I think these events that we managed to create, bringing all these interesting people together worldwide, not just in Europe, but from different continents, it's helped us to gain a very meaningful insight on what youth is doing, not only our youth in Europe, but also our youth in Africa and Asia, or everywhere in the world. So it's very important to have this cohesive and co-creative message, so we can really be part of the change. And the insights you gave, that the process of including youth in the United Nations, in the highest spheres of the policy making, it's a process, it's something that everyone has in mind and that people like you are working for. So I feel very pleased to be part of this and be part of your team. So thank you too for allowing us to make these great events with youth, for youth. And also thank you for the Generation Connect team, because this is your event, this is something that we've created together, but basically because of you. So thank you very much. And have a great day, everyone. And let's stay in contact for the future events that I'm sure there will be a lot and very meaningful too. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. So I'll close the meeting.
Bye. Thanks.
Recording stopped.